Have you noticed this? There's something strange happening in America. The economy hasn't collapsed. The stock market is still running. People still go to work, still shop, still build new things. But more and more Americans share the same quiet feeling. Everything is slipping out of control. Not one single crisis. Dozens of small pressures, piling up at the same time. So what's actually spiraling in America? And why are people only just starting to notice? In this video, we'll trace the least noticed signs, and the final answer might not be what you think. The first sign that America has a problem isn't in the stock market or the GDP report. It's in how people feel. In 2020, a Wall Street Journal/NBC News survey found that 80% of Americans said the country was out of control. Only 15% said things were still fine. Sure, 2020 was a strange year. But here's what makes that number more interesting. The pandemic passed, but the unease didn't leave with it. By 2026, Pew Research found 69% of Americans dissatisfied with how democracy is functioning. The question has shifted from, "What's happening?" to something more uncomfortable. Why does nothing bring things back to normal? It shows up small. A worker checks their bank account after rent, insurance, and electricity. Nothing left to save. A family postpones a car repair because one surprise expense could throw off the whole month. No single scene looks like a national crisis. Just a slow accumulation of small things that make people feel like their lives are being decided by forces beyond their control. A country doesn't need to collapse for its people to feel uneasy. Sometimes all it takes is the future becoming less predictable than yesterday. If that sounds familiar, drop a comment, and stick around, because the next part goes deeper than money. Maybe the system hasn't stopped working. Maybe the problem is that fewer people believe it's working for them. Those sound the same, they aren't. By 2025, Pew found only 17% of Americans trust the federal government to do the right thing almost always or most of the time, one of the lowest levels ever recorded. You don't have to hate the government to feel that. You can still need Social Security, roads, schools, courts, and still think, "I'm not sure the people running this understand my life." And that distrust doesn't stay in Washington. It spreads to media, parties, corporations, universities, even neighbors. Americans have always argued. That's not new. What's new is when both sides stop believing the other is even acting in good faith. That's what makes a society fragile. A worker loses faith in policy. A small business owner doubts regulations will help them. A family isn't sure the healthcare system will be there when something goes wrong. Different reasons, same conclusion. I have to take care of myself. But losing trust isn't what makes a family feel stuck. Money is. And that's where it gets uncomfortable. Zoom out, and America never hit a classic economic crisis. No mass bank failures, no 20% unemployment. The Fed reports 73% of adults say their finances are okay or comfortable. Sounds fine, until the next number. Over 90% still say rising prices are a real concern. That's the paradox. The economy looks healthy on paper while life feels increasingly unpredictable. A paycheck still lands every 2 weeks. Then rent goes up, insurance goes up, food costs more, the car needs a repair, a medical bill shows up right when the account can't absorb it. The Fed found 59% of adults hit at least one major unexpected expense in the past year. 16% didn't pay all their bills in full last month. 26% delayed medical care because of cost. Most people aren't drowning, but more of them are living with such a thin cushion that one bump derails the month. A financial crisis doesn't always start with a job loss. Sometimes it starts with losing predictability. This month's fine. Next month's question mark. A $200 surprise won't touch a wealthy household. For a family with no slack, it turns a savings plan into a credit card balance. Here's what that looks like up close. 7 a.m. A mother drops her kid at school, clocks in. Nothing dramatic. By noon, the car throws a warning light, not serious, but the mechanic says the familiar line. A few $100. The Fed has used $400 as a benchmark for years, whether a household can absorb an unexpected expense. For a family on the edge of their budget, $400 can eat an entire month's plan. And the car isn't the only hit that day. Electricity bill, insurance payment, groceries a little pricier again. That evening, the kid gets sick. No single blow is a crisis. It's the small hits arriving one after another, a boat sunk not by one wave, but dozens of small ones. That's the real story, not that Americans are getting poorer, but that they don't know where the next surprise is coming from. 1 month you're fine. Next month it's the credit card. The month after, you're paying that off. The American dream used to be simple: buy a house, pay the mortgage, and over time it becomes your safety cushion. Now the real question isn't whether you can buy a house, it's whether you can absorb the risk that comes with owning one. Insurance bill, property tax, broken AC, roof repair, a leaking pipe. The mortgage never skips a month for any of it. Fed data shows 20% of insured homeowners say they can't afford the coverage they'd actually want, and 14% struggle to pay their premiums. A home was supposed to mean safety. For some families, it's become a new source of financial risk. It's still an asset. An asset just isn't the same thing as security. There's something hard to measure that you only notice once it's gone: faith in the future. Someone can have a job, pay their mortgage, still go out on the weekend, and still carry a quiet background question: will things still be okay next year? When that question lingers, people change how they live. They postpone plans. Stay in jobs that don't fit anymore. Don't move. Don't borrow. Don't have another kid. Stop believing today's decision will actually pay off tomorrow. That fear doesn't take money out of your wallet right away. It takes the future out of your plans. Pew notes Americans are broadly pessimistic about the country and trust in institutions, and each other, is fraying. Disagreement doesn't break a society. Losing the belief that other people are acting in good faith does. An elderly neighbor wonders if anyone would actually help if she needed it. A worker wonders if the new policy was ever meant for people like him. Different stories, same ending: I have to take care of myself. Here's the strange part. Ask Americans why the country feels out of control, and they almost never agree. Prices. Politics. A government that doesn't work. Corporations. AI. Automation. Demographics. Some of these are backed by data, some are just opinions people are reaching for. That's the real story. When people don't have one clear explanation, they build their own. Everyone's in the same room, shining a flashlight into a different corner. Maybe America isn't just facing an economic or political crisis. Maybe it's facing a crisis of interpretation. And when there's no shared story left, that gap fills fast with anger, suspicion, and oversimplified answers to something genuinely complicated. The feeling that something's wrong is real. That doesn't mean every explanation for it is. And then there's the newest piece. AI is stepping out of the phone screen and into the physical landscape. For years, AI meant chatbots and software. But answering millions of queries and training massive models takes physical infrastructure, data centers, land, transmission lines, substations, cooling systems, and above all, electricity. A 2026 study of 403 hyperscale U.S. data centers estimated they consume roughly 68 to 99 TWh of power, about 1.8% of total U.S. electricity use in the central scenario. The more virtual AI gets, the more physical its footprint becomes. A field turns into a construction site. A power station needs more capacity. A quiet town suddenly has an industrial-scale facility next door. The Department of Energy now flags data centers and AI as a major driver of new electricity demand, with LBNL data suggesting data centers could reach 9.5 to 15.3% of U.S. electricity consumption by the end of the decade. This isn't a story about whether AI is good or bad. It's a story about who builds the transmission lines, who supplies the power, and who ultimately pays for all of it, especially as data centers start competing with households, factories, and entire cities for the same stretched grid. A 2026 study already warns that clusters of data centers constrain local power grids in places where AI infrastructure is expanding faster than the grid can keep up. So maybe nothing in America has technically broken. The lights are still on. People are still working, still building, still getting up in the morning. But trust is thinner. Cushions are thinner. Faith in tomorrow is thinner. And now, a new technology is quietly competing for the same electricity, the same land, the same resources everyone else depends on. Nothing collapsed. It just started to feel, for millions of people, at the same time, like it's all a little further out of their hands. If any part of this hit close to home, tell me which one in the comments. And if you want more of these deep dives into what's actually happening in America, subscribe, there's more coming.